Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion. Look, I've got new videos on the channel Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mondays are for poetry. And the poetry today comes to us from Emily Dickinson, in the big old book of Emily Dickinson, the complete poems of Emily Dickinson. It is numbered 1168 on page 520. Pardon me. And it reads as such. As old as woe. How old is that? Some 18,000 years. As old as bliss. How old is that? They are of equal years. Together chiefest they are found, but seldom side by side. From neither of them, though he try, can human nature hide. One more time, just so that we've got it. As old as woe. How old is that? Some 18,000 years. As old as bliss. How old is that? They are of equal years. Together chiefest they are found, but seldom side by side. From neither of them, though he try, can human nature hide. So the first thing that should, I think, stand out here is the question of subject. We don't know what it is that is as old as woe, that is as old as bliss. We just start with the statement, as old as woe. How old is that? What is as old as woe? We don't know. It doesn't matter. I think that's where the back of your mind is supposed to start working. Because what we're doing here is we're setting up something that is as old, not as time, but as old as the human experience itself. And we're coupling woe and bliss. We're saying that the two are one. We brethren are, he said, right? So basically, bliss and woe, we're setting up the argument. There is no light without dark. There is no good without bad. There is no right without wrong. This sort of thing. So, when we're getting into this, we have Emily Dickinson doing the same, right, wrong, good, bad, light, dark, with woe and bliss. Bliss, I think the connotation there is quite often something which is otherworldly, something which is inexplicable. Someone being in bliss cannot often say, I am in bliss because that feeling, where it's a good feeling because, that's mirth, that's happiness, that's joy. That's not bliss. Bliss seems to, in my experience, be something with which there is no definitive cause. I've never considered woe to be that way. I have never considered woe to be something which is a disembodied experience. I've always considered there to be a reason for woe, but also reason with woe. That is to say, there is something which is causing me woe, but the reflection of my woe will be in congruence with the cause of woe. A family member dying. There is a certain level of grief with which that will be met. You fall below that threshold, and it's no longer woe, there's reason for worry. You don't meet that threshold, and two things happen. One, people will question, what's the deal here? Why isn't he sort of mourning the loss of X, Y, or Z? Or two, people know you're giving that stiff upper lip. And that is something for which people are often admired. You want to go back to examples. You want to go back to why Jordan Peterson often makes a point of this. Be strong enough that at your father's funeral, other people can come to you for strength. This is something that is admirable. But woe in and of itself seems to have some direct correlation to some real life event. Bliss, in my experience, does not. Bliss, it seems, from the way that these words are used or are thrown around, does not. One cannot explain a feeling of bliss. One can explain a feeling of happiness, of mirth, of joy. Bliss, it seems to me, the way the word is used, the way in which the action is partaken, there's a hell of a sentence, right? Seems to be a relief, something more akin to relief than it does earned happiness. So, when we're talking about this poem, as old as woe, how old is that? Some 18,000 years. As old as bliss, how old is that? They are of equal years. Together, chiefest they are found, but seldom side by side. From neither of them, though he try, can human nature hide. This presentation of those ideas seems to suggest that their spark in the human experience, that spark stone from which both were born, may have been a single event. Woe and bliss happened at the same time. They were born like a particle and an antiparticle, sprung into existence in order to neutralize one another. What this still brings into question is the subject of the poem. What is it which is as old as bliss? What is it which is as old as woe? And I think the language entailed here, the language employed here, does not suggest as much as necessitate that third party. Emily Dickinson, here we are. This poem is thought to have been written in 1870, some 8 years after her original letters from which this poet had sprung. What is his name? She wrote them to, what is his name? It's in here someplace. Anyway, she wrote them to, it doesn't matter, Dickinson. She wrote them to Dickinson, sort of declaring herself a poet. This is 8 years after that. This is 1870. If we go back to the original poem, 1850, we have 20 years of poetry experience here. We have 20 years of writing and language here. And hey, I'll be the first to admit, though my favorite poet is Emily Dickinson, sometimes her language is goddamn confounding. Not gonna lie. Not gonna make excuses for it. But I never question whether or not she knew what she was doing with them. The fault lies on me. All that confounding language, all of those halves of sentences, all of those esoteric declarations, the reason they don't land is not because of delivery. The reason they don't land is because my catcher's mitt was not in the right place. It was a strike. I was set up wrong, if I could continue the baseball cliches there. But what here do you think is as old as woe, is as old as bliss, and comes from the same spark stone as woe and bliss? Where is that third? And is it so? You've got woe, you've got bliss. Would that third be here, right in the middle of the two? Or would that third be on the side of woe, on the side of bliss, thus rendering woe or bliss the neutral party? I don't know. I really don't. But I think the subject of the poem is what it is that is supposed to make the reader question. You are not supposed to question the relationship between woe and bliss. though I do. I think that the question inherent to this poem is, what is that third party, which is as old? So the 18,000 years, what I'm assuming, I'm not going to look into it. What I'm assuming that is the declaration that these things are as old as the human experience. How long we have been us is a subject for debate to this day. Certainly it would have been in 1870. But it is interesting to me that there is a third emotion, a third element of the human experience, which is necessitated by the very language in the very beginning of this poem, which is not enumerated by Emily Dickinson. I'm afraid I don't have an answer to this question. But I think your answer to this question, whatever that may be, whatever it is that you think fits into this triumvirate, says something about you. And that, well, that's the beauty of poetry, isn't it? That is all I have for this discussion of As Old as Woe, the first line from the Emily Dickinson poem numbered 1168. Hitting the like button really helps me out here on the channel. If you are not subscribed and you somehow made it 11 minutes into a poetry discussion about an obscure Emily Dickinson poem, what in the hell are you doing here? Hit the subscribe button so I know you will come back. But I also have new videos Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays on my personal channel, a link to which can be found in the description below.